to add some value to those conversations today by talking about largely two things. One is, what is the current funding scenario in India looking like, given the pandemic and given the times we find ourselves in? And the second one being, what are some of the best practices one can follow when it comes to fundraising and financial sustainability? We've tried our best to make this session super engaging and interactive. So, would love to hear your thoughts. I mean, you are the stars implementing on the ground, and you have, the true best practices to share. So, we'd love to have that session and lots of participation there too. Would also love to see your faces if that's comfortable. And with just that, I'm gonna get started. Um, all right. Right. So let's talk about how do we even define success for fundraising, right? What is it that we are looking for? And the very simple answer to that is that the end goal we're working towards is how can we create for ourselves a diverse funder base which has longer term repeat funders, right? And this links to one of the key sources of financial stress that a lot of Indian nonprofits experienced right at the onset of the pandemic, which is that we had nonprofits who were relying on 2 to 3 donors for 60 to 70% of their budget, and that is exactly the kind of scenario we want to avoid. So we're going to chat a little bit about even how do you go about building this diversified funder base? What does it even mean? And the way we're going to do that is looking at it externally, which is really the macro perspective, and then being a little more inward looking to talk about what are the kind of practices we can adopt. So, with that, moving just into the external side of things, right? This is a little bit of an opportunity map of where we see or what are the kind of stakeholders we see as critical to funding for the next 2 to 3 years. Just to do a quick breakdown by stakeholder. CSR is a bit of a not so great picture right now, largely because, of course, quantum of CSR funding is tied to corporate profits, which has taken a big hit this year. So we're expecting CSR funds to drop significantly. And it's also a bit of a pessimistic picture for foreign foundations too, where we're seeing something of an exodus of funds moving out of India, which is largely driven by two factors, right? One is around, of course, the need to combat COVID-19 within their own home countries. And the second is, of course, the tightening regulatory environment around foreign funding in India itself. We have a bit of a moderate outlook on, individual givers, which is your HNIs and UHNIs, which is also, we do expect individual philanthropy to play a big role over the next 2 to 3 years, especially given the kind of picture we have with CSR and foreign funding. But it's important to understand that that quantum of funding might take a bit of a dip for the next year or so, simply because of things like erosion in their portfolio because of stock markets and things of that sort. What we are very optimistic about is actually Indian foundations and government funding as kind of the way to go, at least for the next 2 to 3 years. But there are certain caveats there too. I think we're all aware that a lot of the big Indian foundations have more of an own and operate model. So we do have the possibility where they will be redirecting a lot of their funds either to their own programs or to their current grantees. And in case of government funding, this has been a big avenue of funding, especially for COVID relief. And we expect that to continue with preferences for government grant making towards healthcare and allied sectors of COVID relief. So that's a little bit of what the macro picture kind of looks like, and the key implication is that when you're looking at fundraising, it's a little important to look outside and zoom out a little to see what the state of fundraising and what the landscape looks like, because what it helps you do is prioritize who are the kind of funders or who are the kind of stakeholders that you should prioritize and you should connect with. So that's a little bit of the external piece that I was talking about when it comes to fundraising, right? Now we'll kind of move into the heart of our topic, which is what can we do as nonprofits to strengthen our fundraising, and what are some kind of best practices to build greater funding and financial sustainability. So what we have here is kind of a 3-step roadmap to doing that. We'll touch upon 1 and 3 a little briefly, and we'll really unpack 2 and deep dive into it. So step 1 of this roadmap, right? Building your story and articulating your fundraising requirements. Now, this is really where you start, and there are 2 parts to this. The first part, where you're building your story, what's critical here is really going back to the roots of your programming, and how is that program kind of linking to the outcomes that your organization has committed itself to, right? That's the key question you often want to answer, but also the key question that often gets overlooked, which is linking the program and the activity that you're fundraising for to your organization's outcomes. And the second important part here is even articulating your fundraising requirements. And the way to do that is by creating your business plan. Now, what does this business plan do? Your business plan will lay down your list of activities over the next 1 to 3 years. And it'll help you lay down what is your budgeting requirement versus what are the funds available already, to then help you tightly articulate this is the kind of funding we need, these are the purposes we want that funding for, which will help you have a better understanding of who are the kind of funders we want to approach. Just a quick example of that is, if unrestricted funding or a corpus is what you're looking for, then CSR is not the kind of stakeholder who is ready to kind of offer that very easily, right? So having an understanding of what is the money that we need, what do we need it for, is really helping you be better at targeting your funders and understanding how to even approach fundraising. So we close on step 1 just with saying that, we have our powerful narrative and we know exactly what we need and what we need it for. So that's really about step 1 of this roadmap. Just moving into step 2, right? And this is the one that we're really going to focus and get into. So there are multiple layers through which we're going to talk about how do you even understand funders, how do you identify them, how do you approach them. And this was one of the key themes that we saw in a lot of the questions that we received from this group when we floated a survey. So, I would love to have any interaction or questions from you on thoughts around this bit specifically. The first element that we're going to kind of look at is around what is the overall process that you use even to kind of identify your funders, right? And while this process itself is no rocket science, what's important is to look at the first and the final piece of the process. And let's get into the first one, right? We're saying building your database. And again, this was one of the questions that we got, right? That where do we even look for funders? How do we find people? Is there some kind of golden list we can go to? The unfortunate answer is that there is no real golden list which is going to help you identify exactly who to approach. But you do have a couple of guiding resources. And, I'm going to walk you through a couple of tools, and happy to hear from the group if there are any kind of tools that the group is aware of. But when you're building your database and trying to understand, who's even out there, who's giving, whether it's corporates, whether it's foundations, whether it's UHNIs and HNIs, some useful sources that you can kind of go to are, I think there are 2 kinds of sources out there really. One is you have these lists which keep getting published, right? You have like the Fortune 500, you have the Forbes list, you have the Haroon list. So these are lists which are talking about corporates and what they are giving, and what are the causes they are giving to, and also talking about lists of individuals, what are their philanthropy focus areas, and so on and so forth. One of the things I've actually tried to do is, even show you some of the tools that we can look at. And I'm going to share 2 or 3, and then we can kind of move on from there. And of course, happy to hear if there's anything else coming up from the group too. Um, Sorry, I'm just having a little bit of trouble sharing. Um, okay, yeah, here we go. So actually, I mean, this was something I was trying to do, right? Because when it became very clear that one of the things that we want to answer is where do we even look for indicators of who's giving money right now? And even I was like literally just doing a Google search, and I'm sharing some of the tools I came across with you, and we'll of course put these links on the chat too. But this is something that DevX has created, where they're looking at a global view, and you can kind of deep dive into India as well. And what they're doing here is, sorry, I've deep dived into India and that's loading. But what it's going to help you do is kind of understand what are the kind of COVID focus areas that people are giving money to. Is it economic aid? Is it response and relief? Is it healthcare? What does it look like? Who are some of the funders in the space, and who are the people apart from government, and what are the kind of multilateral agencies or even beyond who are giving at the moment, and also a list of a couple of funding opportunities below, right? So this is one of the dashboards that seems like a good place to go to just to get a pulse of funding. The other one is something called Let's Endorse, which is trying to collate again a list of grants that are out there for other kinds of specific sources, which might be useful, to just keep a pulse on maybe every month or so to understand if there are any grants that your organization is eligible for. Of course, these are just two of them, and we're still kind of making progress in this space of data collation. So happy to hear from all of you if there are any other resources that we can all reference. So that was just a little bit of a deviation from our presentation, right? Just moving back. Okay, so that's a little bit around the first step of how do you even identify your funder, how do you even build your database. I think the next thing that I want to focus on is the last bit of this process, which is around investing and maintaining relationships. While this sounds very, commonsensical, like, oh, I know this, the truth is that fundraising often, unfortunately, becomes very transactional. You're pursuing the funder for a particular purpose, and if it's a yes or a no, it kind of ends there. Now the truth is that fundraising is a very critical and also tricky process which needs continuous investment, right? It needs continuous cultivation of relationships, and really constantly engaging your potential funder to actually convert even cold leads. So this is something that you definitely want to prioritize, right? You want to have a dedicated, maybe it's a dedicated group of people doing this every week, maybe it's a dedicated platform, it could be something as simple as newsletters, but you want to constantly keep talking about the work that you are doing, and talking to all of these potential connections at all times, and constantly cultivating multiple leads rather than putting all of your energies behind one or two particular funders and then kind of not seeing it go through. So that's just a little bit around how do we even identify funders and what are the kind of resources we look at. I think the next thing we can unpack is even around, once you have your target funders, how do you even understand them better? Because understanding them goes a long way in helping you customize your pitch, and also what is it that is the best approach for a particular funder. Because the truth is that a one size fits all approach does not work well with fundraising. So what you want to do is have a bit of a base built, that we know our story, we know our requirement, but we're still ready to kind of tweak and modify based on what is best suited to our funder. And one of the useful ways to do this is, by assessing where your funder is and how driven are they by, heart and mind. And let's use an example to say how this would influence the pitch we would make, right? Let's take an example of, a funder, Mr. XYZ. He's an individual philanthropist, right? And he's someone who falls very much on the left hand side extreme of this spectrum, right, in terms of being largely driven by the heart. And in this case, the kind of pitch that you want to make, you want to put the vulnerable group that your organization is serving at the very center of your pitch, right? And that kind of story, maybe using powerful visuals, videos, talking about people and talking through stories, that kind of an approach is a lot more useful versus having a lot of data and numbers out there for this kind of an individual. And let's say, on the extreme right hand side of the spectrum, maybe you have like a CSR, and they're all about, oh, we are talking about scale, show us what you can do, how many states, what are the numbers. So in this case, you want to kind of invest a little bit of space of your pitch in really painting a picture of the size of the problem, right? Like, what are we even tackling here? And then how can we quantify the dent that our work will make to this problem? So that's a little bit of one of the approaches you can use to understand your funder well. The important thing to keep in mind is that, of course, there are no stereotypes. I mean, it's not like CSR is on one side of the spectrum and individual philanthropists are on the other. And the other truth is that people keep moving, right, as their experiences evolve, as they evolve in their giving journeys. So it's important to kind of keep a pulse on where your priority funders are at on the spectrum in terms of what they are motivated by, because that will help you customize your pitch, and also understand what is the kind of activity or program that you should be approaching them for, right? So that's just a little bit of the second layer that I wanted us to look at. um, then we're talking about, we had a lot of questions even around grants, right? Like, what do we do? How do we approach different types of grants? So on and so forth. It's become a little more trickier with, the remote ways of working that we find ourselves in. So just unpacking that a little bit too. And let's go, by stakeholder type and the kind of grants they offer. So when we look at corporate grants, and these would be ones that come either from CSR or they come from corporate foundations. And here, what we find, within these specific grants, that it'll be very like, talk about your brand, talk about data. There'll be a very lengthy decision-making process with a lot of intensive due diligence involved. And also the kind of decision making and the people involved will be fairly extensive and comprehensive, and will take a little bit of time to convert on these kind of grants. And on the flip side, while you're taking a longer time on decision making, the funding actually is pretty restricted. Typically CSR is for 1 to 3 years and not longer than that. So that's a little bit of the balance you want to strike there. And what you want to do to keep track of corporate grants is identify the kinds of companies that are well aligned with the cause or the sector that you work in, right? And then keep monitoring the kind of companies keep, publishing sustainability reports where they talk about the work they do, and their websites talk about their CSR funding cycles. So keeping a pulse on those two things for the kind of corporates that you are focusing on goes a long way in making sure you're not missing out on important grant opportunities. So that's on corporate grants. Moving to individual grants, right, which is basically giving by individual philanthropists. Now, here the approach is very different from a corporate grant, right? Where your giving is very, very emotionally led. There's a lot of trust building involved. It's a more slower process in the sense that you're investing a lot more than just, filling out a proposal or a grant form and things like that. But the good thing that happens in this case is when you're investing in that kind of relationship building, these are the people who can really become champions and ambassadors for the work that you do, right? And you can unlock many different types of funds with individuals, just given the lack of formal restrictions that we see with corporates and other foundations too. And these are the kind of people where, when you're investing in that trust building and really making them champions, you can actually have access to different types of funding. You can access funding for things that have more indirect impact, like campaigns or advocacy or research, or in some cases even unrestricted funding if you've been able to secure a very strong relationship, and there's a good amount of trust between you and the individual. So that's definitely something to think about. And what you also want to do is engage individual philanthropists beyond capital. And some of the ways to do that are, whether you invite them to sit on your board, whether you invite them to engage in other kinds of areas where they have expertise, whether it's around maybe, just financials, whether it's around monitoring and evaluation, data, so on and so forth. So that's another strategy to pursue when you're looking at individual philanthropists as a key player. Moving to the third one, which is around national and international foundation grants, right? Now, these are the ones that tend to be the most tedious in the sense that, they will have the most structured and never ending proposals that you're kind of looking to fill. But the good thing here is that there's a very easy way to kind of plan for these kind of grants, right? Because once you've identified who are the foundations that you are looking at, you can have a pulse, and it's very important to keep and continue to update a database of these foundations. And what you're looking for is information around what are the kind of RFPs they have out there, what are the deadlines on those, what are they really looking for, who are the people that they have just given grants to, and what are their models, and how can you kind of learn from that. So that's the kind of information you want to maintain, because then it's easy to plan ahead and understand where and when you need to work on these kind of grant opportunities, unlike the others where it's a little bit sporadic. Finally, on to government funding, which I know we have a lot of interest in. So, we've talked to the team at Connect 4 about potentially having something specifically to address government funding and processes there. But a little bit of an introduction that I can give around government funding is just that, here the key question or challenge is even understanding who are the government bodies that you want to approach, because often if you are applying for funding under a particular scheme, etc., there are multiple bodies that are involved in disbursement, and which is the one that is particularly functional or leading the charge at the time that you are considering this kind of funding is often something that takes time to maneuver. So that's something that you want to definitely think about. And the other challenge, of course, is that the officers and the people in charge keep changing, and with that even their priorities in the sector keep changing. So just kind of aligning yourself with that and having a broader mandate towards government funding is useful, so that you can manage any small shifts in priorities. Obviously, the good thing about government funding and the reason it's worth all of these challenges is that it's definitely a preferred avenue when you're looking at scaling, right? In terms of working with the utmost player who's able to take on your programs and continue them. And finally, moving to, a fairly, I mean, now not so new, but still up and coming source of funding, which is around crowdfunding and retail platforms, which brings us back to a very important point that, our access to funding is getting a lot more democratized thanks to the internet. So, what we really need to do here is make sure that we are on top of our digital presence, right? Like, are we keeping our websites updated? Are we on platforms like maybe GuideStar India or CAF and so on and so forth? So that's just a little something to think about when you're looking at crowdfunding and retail platforms, because these are easy, quick win ways to kind of get some amount of funding. So it's important, and it's also a bit of a no regret move to just keep your online presence up and running. I think we'll do a quick check with the group, and let's see how many of us are listening, and maybe if we can have a quick reaction thumbs up for everyone who thinks that their website is super updated and gives an accurate reflection of the work that they do. Can we just take a minute to get a sense of that? Any thumbs ups yet?
We have 7 as of now. 8 thumbs up. 9. 10. 11. 12.
All right. Okay. In the interest of time, we will continue, but definitely something for us to work on, right? Which is around going back and seeing what is it about our website that's not yet updated. And that's a very, I mean, it's helping you on multiple fronts, right? It's helping you even with the other kind of funders who are coming to look at your work after seeing some kind of proposal that you submitted, or maybe some webinar they've seen you at. And also especially appealing to crowdfunding and retail platforms where your website is your core source of communication, and a prime and easy opportunity to powerfully showcase the work that you're doing. So yes, that's a little bit just on how do you even decode funding opportunities, what are the implications of how they are structured, and so on and so forth. um, Finally, moving on to proposals, right? And we're going to touch this a little briefly because, again, I know there is another Connect for webinar that is specifically talking about proposal writing. But I think the top line message here is outcome centricity, right? How it's very important that when you're thinking about your program and you're thinking about the proposal, it's very important to tie that program and its activities to the kind of outcomes that your organization has committed itself to. And being able to show that linkage and very clearly what is the story and how will you achieve these outcomes through these activities, right? Other than that, I think the other important point is how your operational plan, which is that this is the list of activities, this is how we'll do it, this is who will be in charge of operations, so on and so forth, how that needs to talk to the budget at every step of the way, right? It's not like a step 2 and then step 3 kind of process. It's more of a 2 and 3 happen together and need to sync up, because you will probably be iterating your budget based on your plan or your plan based on your budget, more likely the latter. And it's important to allow for that kind of fluidity to make sure that the budget that you do land up with is something that is achievable. So that's a little bit just on proposals, but again, outcome centricity is the key point that I would drive when it comes to proposal writing. Um, Finally, coming to the step 3, right, of the roadmap that we were talking about, which is, and I think we've touched upon this earlier too, which is how do you, and very important, how do you keep the relationship going and growing, right? And here, I mean, there are some perspectives that you need to have, right? Whether it's about looking at your funder as your partner, right, and being very transparent about the kind of challenges that you are facing, because I mean, of course, we are in very difficult and stressful times, and it is very useful to you and your funder to kind of open up about challenges and solve them together as a team. I think the other thing to do is, of course, maintain transparency and accountability every step of the way, because that is, an easy process that is good for your organization and your funder and goes a long way in keeping the relationship going. And finally, also thinking about thought leadership, right? Like, what are the different kinds of avenues your organization could be on, or could showcase its work on, which is useful to engage your current as well as potential priority funders. And some examples of that could be things like newsletters. Nowadays, videos and things like that are also very useful and powerful ways to engage people. Also, organizing online events, right? Like, let's not let social distancing come in the way of engaging our funders, and finding platforms to talk to them even through platforms like Zoom and so on. So some of these ways to kind of make sure that you are constantly talking to your funder is super important. um, and I think finally, just a little bit I wanted to touch upon, just given that, COVID itself has brought on a lot of financial stress for the development sector. And while a significant portion of the sector seems to have recovered from it and, resorted to some sort of normalcy, I think the biggest message or the biggest learning we've all had from the pandemic is how important it is to proactively monitor and proactively act on your financial situation, right? So what we have here is basically a couple of moves that you can look at when you're thinking about funding and financial sustainability, and we look at it from two angles. One is around optimizing your cost, right, to even reduce your outflows, and the second is around funder management, which is around how can you diversify and secure greater revenue streams. And what you see in red, yellow, green are the types of moves you can make. So no regret are the kind of moves that you could even be making today, right? Even if you think that you are in a very comfortable situation financially. Risk mitigation are the kind of moves that you want to make if you feel like you are on the verge of reverting back to the financial stress you felt initially with COVID. And extraordinary moves are, of course, if you think you continue to face financial stress and need to take some kind of extreme measures to solve for them, right? So some of the moves, I'm just going to list a couple of the easy ones here because we may not need extraordinary moves at this point. But some of the interesting and important things to do are, postpone your non-personnel costs and activities, delay promotions, increments, and key hires at least for some time. you want to definitely cancel all kinds of avoidable costs, right? Prioritize the kind of programs that are key to your community, given that we are all still emerging from COVID relief and so on. So, what are the kind of costs which are priority and what are the ones that are avoidable, and actively reviewing that. So that's some of the moves that are useful to make at a cost optimization level. And with respect to funder management, I think the very important but often overlooked message here is keep talking to your funders. Keep updating them on what's the plan. Is there any kind of pivot that you need to make in the activities that their funds were originally supposed to be used for, and are you able to secure their approval for that? If not, what is Plan B? So on and so forth. Constant conversation and making sure that you have approached each and every one of your funders, even for the next financial year and beyond, to just kind of secure alignment with them on what it is that you want to use that funding for, is super critical. And I think the other important part is just around business development, right? In terms of how you're looking at your proposal process as well. And are you actively monitoring the pipeline? Are we being more proactive and actively looking for leads as opposed to being reactive and only acting on what comes our way? So those are, the two kind of headline messages on funder management. And these are some of the moves that you can probably think of, or definitely maybe want to create some kind of core committee, whether it's with your finance and leadership team, to just kind of review your financial situation maybe every month, at this point, given that these are stressful times, and just see if there is a need to do any of these actions, because of course acting earlier is in your best interest. So yes, that brings me to an end of the formal presentation itself. And we did have a breakout session planned, because we wanted to hear from everyone in the group, just on what are some of your experiences and how can we really action all of this out. So with that, over to Adelina to help us get into our breakout rooms.
Thank you so much, Saloni, for these beautiful insights. At Connect4, we definitely encourage a safe and collaborative space for all our partners. Hence, we'd like to hear from you who are working on ground and learn from each other about the best practices. And hence, Saloni has created a list of templates that will help us to think and reflect on our learnings and how we can help each other better. Before we move forward with the breakout sessions, please do keep these two norms in mind. One, open participation and sharing. And two, note taking in case any point strikes you. And in case of any questions, please do send across in the chat box, or discuss it with each other freely. And as the breakout room discussion is not being recorded, you can openly share about your personal experiences and learnings. Um, I'd like to now request Arti to open up the breakout rooms for all.
Yes. Yeah, the breakout rooms are open now. I would request everyone to join the breakout room.
Be something as simple as, I know you already have a WhatsApp group, so how can you share challenges and solutions there? And more importantly, how can you even actually action on some of this collaboration, right? Whether it's co-creating thought leadership webinars, having online events and showcases where you jointly invite partners, really putting your work and perspective out there through publications and articles that you co-author. So there is definitely merit in talking about collaboration within this group as well. So those are the kind of thoughts that I wanted to leave you with, and over to Adelina to help us with the closing.
Thank you so much, Saloni. Um, I'm sure that we've all had a very informative session. Like even the breakout rooms, a lot of good questions came up. So just give me a second. Um, we'd like to close with like we can now think about three main takeaways that you've had from this particular session. Maybe you could share it in the chat too. And I'd like to conclude by thanking Saloni for this really excellent insights into the questions that were raised. And I want to thank everyone present here for joining us for the session and for being a wonderful audience. I request you to please fill the feedback form as it will help us curate many more sessions like these. And as mentioned earlier, if you have any questions that have remained unanswered in the session, please put it in the queries on the feedback form, and we will request Saloni to answer the questions offline, which will be shared with all the attendees via email. We hope to see you all for our webinar on Charity Commissioner and the legal aspects that revolve around trust formation and registration. And that is all. We hope we have a wonderful evening, and I look forward to seeing you next after 2 weeks. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, one second, madam. Adilena, hello. This is Murlidhar. Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, 1 minute. Just spare 1 minute. So we have heard about the many templates, many structural pattern, and then organizations are facing in and around, and answers also came out. How the Dasara Saloni madam help us, and how the Connect for will help us, the small organizations like us, or medium organizations, some others are there. So how the we can able to sort out this environment, how to bring it the a positive, vibrant fundraising strategies. Can you share 1 or 2 points on that part?
I think, Adelina, feel free to add into this. But what we can do is, this was more of an introductory session, which was super basic, right? We can kind of deep dive into all of the best practices that we talked about, and maybe have smaller sessions where we're talking to maybe 5 or 6 people together and really addressing specific challenges in the context of your organization. Other than that, happy to kind of be connected to you, maybe through Connect4, just to see how we can have some kind of one-on-one consultation as well, just to maybe help transfer some of our best practices and add value any way we can. So we'll connect with the Connect4 team and maybe include that as part of the post session survey, and kind of gain interest in something of that sort too.
Yes, and also you can, with respect to the volunteering services, as you already know, we can help you with the resources and skills in building that team by connecting with volunteers. And also, we are thinking of creating some kind of content that would probably help you in planning it out. Additionally, we'll be uploading this webinar on our YouTube platform. So maybe you'll have time. So maybe you could probably go back into the presentation and check on the strategies, a few pointers that we mentioned in planning it out. That will probably give you a guideline, a roadmap on executing the plan too. I hope that helps.
I have some more point. The point here is whatever the structural pattern which you are already working on that same line, and we feel happy. But what we are feeling in the sense is so the expertise is saying that yes, you can go ahead. So that sense of answer I am expecting from my organization's point of view, how it could be happening and what sort of connection can be taking place. Because as you mentioned, the volunteer platform is opening, but still I am facing some issues about the uploading my request over the last 10 days. I am following with other person, Aparna Ghosh, I believe. So this is okay, I can do that. But the point here is some like you people are expertise and this raising the funds of the lakhs of rupees, but we need a small amount, 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, that's much only to define a project. And we have the project and we have been experienced and how it should be important for us. In that point of view, you people can help us then finalize that strategy. Then we can able to have the more confidence and going further step. That's the point. I'm looking the opportunity from your both of side, from Dasara as well as the Adelina.
So yeah, I understand that like another issue that did another concern and challenge that did come up is the turnover part, right? So the respect to Connect for, we can definitely help you with like these knowledge and skill, knowledge and capacity building sessions. We can connect you with the needed persons who could probably help you in strategizing. But with the implementation of the plan, that is something that we like the NGOs and their teams to kind of work um, on their own. Um, but with respect to specific queries and on the strategizing, and in case anything comes up with respect to the execution part of it, like if we are able to kind of like suggest a few ideas from our end, we can definitely work on that again through the volunteering services and also probably a potential like a guideline on going about the same. Um, yeah. So
Adelina,
yes.
Like
Adelina, I think what, sorry to interrupt, but hi Saloni, thanks for the great session. I'm Vishesh from Sashakti. Great session there. I think where Murli is coming from is more of these templates and tools are really available in on the internet as well. But to actually do a hands-on during some sort of a session, if that can be incorporated, I think that is where it gives us a chance to sort of work on those templates a little bit, see where we are going wrong, and maybe do a course correction so that that somewhere or the other in implementation shows some sort of efficacy. I think that's where he's trying to come from.
exactly.
All right. So we do have an upcoming webinar plan that is going to be more hands-on
Yeah.
on proposal writing. We'll also think about on a
Including
hands-on
that.
workshop that will probably include the pointers that we discussed today. You'll be informed about the dates very soon. You can also check our website that talks about the proposal writing workshop, and we updated more on the upcoming webinars and of course we are here to serve you all and be able to kind of provide you with the best service as we can. So in case you have any ideas on how we can probably help you better, you can include it as suggestions and recommendations on the feedback form itself so that we could keep it in mind and probably introduce as new CF services after discussing it with our team. um, I hope that helps. It's all a process, and we definitely look forward to working with you all again very
We'll
soon.
definitely keep
Right.
this in mind in planning future webinars.
Right.
And we'll make sure that we add that in the upcoming webinars then.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for being with us. We extended by 20 minutes. Thank you so much, Saloni, for being a part of this webinar journey. It's been great working with you, and we really hope to connect with you soon. Take care. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you all. Take
Thank you
care.
so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.